Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual long walk presentation this evening. My name is Michelle DeLuce. I'm Associate Director of Alumni Relations at Trinity College. Before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping items, technical details to mention. You'll notice that the chat is disabled for this session. We plan to use the Q&A function on Zoom as the primary way for you to communicate with us. So if you'd like to submit a question to panelists, or for some reason you need to contact me as the staff member who's available to help, we'll have you use the Q&A for that, so that everything that we're using for communication is in one place. I also want to note that we received many, many questions for this session in advance. Our panelists will do their best to address as many questions as possible, both pre-submitted and submitted during the session today. But of course, we know time is limited and we won't be able to get to all of them, but we thank you for submitting your questions. With that out of the way, it's my pleasure to hand things over to our moderator this evening, President and Professor of History Emeritus, Borden Painter. Bordy, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone, and many thanks for all of you who signed up and for the many questions you sent in. We'll try to cover as many as we can, and later on we'll have a chance for Q&A if you want to send in some questions during the broadcast. Joining me tonight are four of my colleagues, Robin Sheppard of the Athletic Department, Rennie Fulco from Public Policy, Leslie Desmangles from Religion, and Michael Lestz, History, Chinese History. The other day when we had a prep session, Robin totaled up the number of years the five of us had been at Trinity. And Robin, what was the answer?
Yeah, it was fascinating. Everybody was chatting and saying, well, 40 years ago and 42 years ago. So I did a quick total, and this Fab Five right here has put in 206 years of service at Trinity. And somebody said, we've been around longer than the college itself.
Yeah.
200.
Well,
So
we hope all that pays off tonight anyway, but it has been a pleasure for all of us to serve at Trinity for so long. And one of the questions that came up from several people had to do with the current student body, the quality of students, and so on. And it's hard for me to comment because I retired 20 years ago, although I've known a couple individuals who graduated recently and who were very good students and very happy with their life at Trinity. But Rennie is the most recently retired of our group, so I'm going to ask Rennie to start out with any comments you might have.
Sure. So first of all, let me also thank everybody who's here. I can see some names, the participants, and I see some of my old friends, and certainly other people I know. So just thank you all for coming. This is a lovely opportunity for all of us. And when we got together, we couldn't stop talking. So we had real excitement about this. I think what I would say, I retired in June after 43 years at Trinity. And my sense, my own experience is that I have and had wonderful, wonderful students. I directed the public policy and law program. I also coordinated the legal studies minor. And I was involved with students in a variety of ways. And I do think that our Trinity students are excellent. They're curious, they're thoughtful, and many, many of them are engaged, across the disciplines. One thing I would say, just that I think is very important for us to think about is how difficult the pandemic was for these young people, especially the students who've, graduated more recently. And I would say most of them did extraordinarily well. under very difficult conditions. And so I always tip my hat to the students for that because it was really, really hard. So in my opinion, we continue to attract strong students with a variety of interests and from more and more parts of the world, certainly than when most of us began at Trinity. So I would just kick off with that.
Thank you. Michael, you want to add something?
Well, when we were talking, there was a sort of prequel for us to get together and rehearse a little what we would say. And I retired now 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And I had a unique experience this semester. I took a course, a Trinity undergraduate course in Russian. I hadn't studied Russian since, the 1960s, since 1966 or 67. And I thought the students were terrific. The level of teaching, the teacher was Carol Ani. She did a terrific job with a very challenging Pushkin poem, The Bronze Horseman, that was written in the early 19th century. And I was very impressed with the students. I was impressed by their dedication to the subject. They came almost all the time very well prepared. It seemed to me that the Trinity in the classroom is really doing its magic. Another experience I've had with students is that my class started for my sins, I'm the vice president of my class. I'm the J.D. Vance I'm just kidding, of my class. So our class started a scholarship, and we now have scholars in all 4 classes. And I'm in touch with them. I help recruit them, and they are just an inspiration to us. They create a real bridge to us Emeriti people, and also the members of the class who work with them. Another scholarship program I worked with is the Class of 63 scholarship, which I directed for about 10 years. And Borden this year came with me to the dinner of that august group. And every year they have 8, they've been in business for a long time, and they have 8 scholars in the 4 classes. And those scholars, they all give a little talk at the dinner, at the homecoming dinner. And it's just remarkable to me that, the range of opportunities that they're able to take advantage of. And, it's really, really fun to know them and to see, Trinity often, one of our buzzwords these days, and appropriately so, is transformation, because a real transformation, Borden and I are the only alums in this group, but a real transformation happened for me. I think it happened for Borden too. I'll let him comment on that. Trinity in every respect, I think educationally is doing what it's fulfilling our hopes for the institution.
Yeah, I've enjoyed going to the Class of 63 does have an annual dinner, and with their scholars, and the kids they have are really terrific. I might say though that I think that one of the challenges as a faculty member is trying to wake up and energize the students who are not so engaged. There are a certain number of students that are in college because it was the next thing to do. And the challenge, I think, is to, at some point, wake them up and get them excited about what Trinity can do for them. Leslie, did you want to add anything to our discussion of undergrads?
Perhaps 2 things. like Michael, who sat in the Russian class, and I mentioned this to the group in our practice session, I sat in Gabe Hornung's class on the Hebrew Bible. Now, I was not a very good student because I did not go to every class, I have to admit. And I did not get an F in the course either because of it. But in any case, I was really quite impressed with the students who were in the class. The study was actually in the Hebrew Bible was the study of the book of Esther. Now, when I arrived, it had already done other parts of the Bible. And I assumed from that they had already done perhaps Genesis, story of creation, the myth of creation, and some things about Abraham and so on. But I was just quite impressed because the class consisted of a report on parts of the book of Esther, which actually is a very interesting book. And it's on that book, actually, there's a whole Hebrew, or rather Jewish holiday called Purim, is based on the story of that book. It's a beautiful story, one of the few stories of a woman in the Bible. And I was very interested in it, and that's the reason why I went. And I have to admit, I was very impressed with the students because there was a report that was made on part of the book. And the report was only about 10 minutes long, maybe a little more, but the students were very thorough in their interpretation of various parts of the story. They understood very well the symbolic aspect of it. And what really actually impressed me is that they were able to recall back the story of Abraham and things that they had done at the beginning of the semester, which I missed. But they were able to make the connection in finding out the various images that appeared in Esther, and they were able to make that connection with Abraham and parts of the story, Abraham and Isaac. And I was very impressed with that. But that caused a lot of the students to begin to raise some questions. And there was an interesting discussion that followed after that. Now, this was a seminar. It was a very small class of about, I'd say, 15 students. But the students were very engaged, and I was quite pleased to see that. And if that class represents the quality of students that are now coming to the college, I think I was very pleased to see that. And I would say that there's been this terrific change that has taken in the student body, and that the students that the college is getting are much better than the students perhaps that I knew when I was there and when I joined the faculty about 40 years ago. Let me say one other thing. I think one of the great privileges that I had, and Michael talked about transformation, that made me think of the opportunity that I had to be the advisor to POSSE students. And this was the POSSE students from New York, and there were 10 of them. And I worked very hard with them. It was hard work because some of them were perhaps not as prepared as it could have been to be at Trinity. But one of the wonderful things that happened, and I won't make this longer than to say that I worked with them for four years. And right now, I still have contact with them, all 10 of them, and they write to me and text me, and I text them back. And I had, I have to tell you that out of the 10, one is in a PA school, physician assistant school, and the other one is in medical school. She's actually done 4 years, and she's now a resident at a hospital in New York. I think that's just a remarkable transformation, and I think it could only happen because of the instructions that the students had from this wonderful faculty at Trinity. And so I'm very pleased to say that. I'm not saying that to in any way to boast about myself, but to boast perhaps from the faculty and saying how wonderful the faculty was for these students.
Leslie, I have a vague recollection that the Book of Esther It's the only book in the Bible that doesn't mention God. Is that true?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
It does not. Yeah.
That's my biblical literacy for the day. I'm going to ask Robin to comment. Sometimes we faculty don't realize the close connection that the physical education department, the staff, and the coaches have with our students. I mean, they're the ones who go on long trips home, which I'm sure are a little different when you win and when you lose. And so they often get to know students in a way that we don't. And I know I would sometimes call on someone down in the department to give me some insights into my students. But Robin, do you have some comments?
Well, I do, and I always think everyone's aware of this, but the coaches currently, and even when I was there, they know these students when they are sophomores in high school. They've met their parents. They know their dog's name. They're encouraged, if they want them to come to Trinity, they're very aggressively recruiting them. Sometimes they bring them on campus and they meet folks like yourself who are willing, to give them a tour of your department or something. And so by the time they actually apply, you are right, Borden, our coaches know everything about them. Family, academics, obviously talent. And so I think I can speak for the current coaches, and I'm sure Kristen Noon, if she's listening, would love to chime in. It's an obligation that our department feels that we encourage these folks to come. Some got in because they're brilliant. Some needed a little nudge in admissions. But once they step foot on our campus, we need them to engage. And so when Rennie has someone, or anybody has someone who's a little out of line or doesn't show up, I hope it's still this way. You make a phone call. It's a give and take. We want them to succeed in the classroom above all. So I'm hoping that has come across over the years.
Yes,
for sure.
right. And as I said to the group the last time that we were together, I don't know how many times I've gotten a call from Robin saying, how is so-and-so doing in the class? And the athletics department is very concerned about students. It has been for a very long time, throughout my entire time that I've been at Trinity. Or sometimes I'd be on my way to Hamlin and I would come across Robin and she'd say, by the way, how is so-and-so doing in the class?
Yeah.
He's doing okay. But I didn't hesitate sometimes. If a student was a football player was not doing well, I picked up the phone and called the football coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, so-and-so has got a D in the last exam. And you could be very sure after that the student would straighten up because the coach's words were a good deal more important than mine, but it always worked.
A quick story. I was at physical therapy a couple of days ago, and I saw a woman there who looked familiar, but I wasn't sure. And I turned around and I went, Chloe, at the same time she said Robin, and it was Chloe Wheatley from the English department.
Yeah, right.
And we have, unfortunately, and I've been retired 10 years now, we hadn't seen each other since sometime in the 90s. Well, whenever she came, she was brand new. Our men's basketball team made the NCAAs. They were going to leave on, I don't know, Wednesday. And one of our players was going to miss 2 classes. I didn't know her. So I thought, I'm just going to buck up and I'm going to go to her office. And I knocked on her door and explained the situation. She wanted to know who they were going to play, where it was going to be held. To the point, she was so generous and so supportive that we actually, and this may have been breaking an NCAA rule, but we bought her some gear while we were at the NCAA tournament, came back and gave her a hat and scarf and a few things. She still remembers that. And I just saw her 2 days ago. It was 15 years ago, So it's a wonderful collaboration.
Yeah, as I think most of our alums know, we are a Division III school. And so, as Robin mentioned, there's a lot of active recruiting, but we work within rules and within the New England and NESCAC rules. But I remember when I was filled in for several years as Dean of the Faculty in the 80s, and one of the interesting parts of the job was interviewing final candidates. And I remember, I think Maureen Pine was coming from Cornell. And we had this nice chat, and she really, I mean, she did get the job, and she couldn't wait to leave Cornell, a Division I school. She said the pressure was just unrelenting. Mm-hmm. And I'm so proud that Trinity has a wonderful athletic program, Division III, but it's within bounds and very much part of the educational operation.
It certainly is.
One of the things we can talk about a little bit is the current curriculum, not in too much detail, but it's changed a lot over the years. It covers much more than certainly back in the old days when I was an undergraduate. And I'm sure many of you who are tuning in, it's changed as well. An example would be, Michael, maybe you could talk a little bit about Asian languages and history that certainly were not in the curriculum when I was an undergraduate.
Well, when I first started at Trinity, Leslie and I and our dear friend Jim Miller and Maurice Wade and Ellie Findley, we would get together almost weekly in the old history department lounge in the basement of Seabury, and we would plot together how to make the Trinity curriculum more encompassing, shall I say. Because when I started teaching at Trinity, the curriculum we had was really, in lots of ways, very much like the curriculum I remembered from when I was a student. There were almost no courses on Asia, no Asian languages offered. There was no way to study. Kim Steele offered an African history course, but there really was no good way to become very deeply involved with Africa or Latin America or other parts of the world. And the Middle East, I mean, there was no Middle Eastern studies major, and step by step, these majors were created and faculty were hired to teach within them. And the curriculum became more and more global in its reach. I for a long time, we received a very generous gift from Michael and Trish O'Neill. I think in 2003 or 2004, they created an endowment together with the Riggs family. This made possible amazing study away opportunities in Asia. So, during the time that I was overseeing those two programs, hundreds of Trinity students went to China, to Southeast Asia, to Cambodia, to Vietnam. We created a partnership with Xiangming Chen in Urban Studies as the Dean of the Center of Global and Urban Studies. And, those were really life-changing experiences for the students who took part. We even did some treks in Nepal. I think that I led a total, believe it or not, of about 18 Trinity College treks in various parts of Nepal, sometimes with Craig Schneider and Rich Prgodich. and with Christoph Geiss and Ann Parmenter, your colleague, went with us. Great mountain climber. I mean, she really overshadowed all of us in terms of did climb Mount Everest. You know, we were like, we were Sunday hikers, maybe a cut above that, but nowhere close to her level. And you know, we were talking. Rennie mentioned that Trinity allows faculty chances to be entrepreneurs. I mean, to launch ventures that, you know, might not in a more pot-bound kind of setting ever get underway in a big multiversity or where, you know, there are more bureaucrats than there are faculty. And that's a great thing because so many things have come to life. Not only these things that I was describing, but the women's studies program started in that way. Urban studies was reborn in that way through planning efforts. All of this, you know, occurred because of faculty initiative and initiatives that then were helped along by people like Ron Spencer and the faculty in the departments who wanted to be part of these new things that were joining the curriculum and enriching student life.
Yeah, could I pick up on that?
Go ahead, Rennie.
Yeah, just quickly, because Michael is really talking about something very important. If you do have a good idea as a faculty member, very often you have the opportunity to do some really good things. And just as another example, you know, there was a public policy program that some people may remember. I looked at some names on the list, and it became kind of, how can I say, moribund might be a good word. And Andy Gold and several of us got together and we figured out we were going to do something different. And we started the public policy and law program, which began with about 8 students. And I heard 2 days ago, there are now almost 130 majors in the program. And it's interdisciplinary. And I directed it for 20 years. And I just think it's such a good example. You know, Michael's given good examples. I think everybody could give good examples. There are great examples in the sciences of the same sort of thing. And what I find is that these innovative kinds of programs, there's something that happens. There's something magical when it's interdisciplinary and people don't have to be involved. Because sometimes when you're in a department, you're just in a department, and unless you're creative like Michael, you may not get to do some of these other things, right? Or Leslie also. And what is so important is that when you're interdisciplinary, it's kind of like everybody is in it because they want to do it, right? And there are people, it's not so much, there are have-tos, but there are also a lot of want-tos, I think, in terms of curriculum, in terms of how you conceive of things. And in my experience, compared to sort of my earlier teaching at Trinity, I found doing this interdisciplinary work just opened up all kinds of opportunities. And I see some of the names here, and I'm convinced that some of those people might have been in this kind of program had it been available, you know, 20 or 30, well, it's 20 years old now, so 25 or 30 years ago. And I have to say that it's remarkable what we can do. And just number 2, because I hope this is okay, Borden, but I looked at the list of names and I just want to give a shout out to some of the graduate students and IDP students who are here, because they're also such an important part of a lot of our experiences at Trinity. And so I just want to make sure that they get recognized and understand that they're appreciated as students as well. Because a big part of my experience was both of them.
Thank you, Rennie. Yeah, and mentioning the interdisciplinary program, and one of the things I enjoyed was teaching in guided studies. And, you know, after I had said the 5 minutes that I could about Dante, I knew that Milla would pick up and really give them a lecture, or after I said my 5 minutes on Aquinas, Frank Kirkpatrick would fill in, and we would attend each other's classes and so on.
Mhm.
And of course, Leslie often taught. Now, do I say Caribbean or Caribbean?
You can say either.
Huh? Oh,
You can say
either is
either.
acceptable.
Yeah.
Or
But
either.
you often taught courses on the Caribbean, right?
Yes, I did.
So we really covered a lot of the globe in the way that wasn't true back in the old days. I did want to get on to, there's a question that was asked about tenure track versus adjunct faculty. And I think it's fair to say at Trinity that the large percentage of positions are tenure track, but there's always room for adjuncts. I think I recall in art history, for example, there was a very good adjunct who taught Asian art 2 courses a year. So when we didn't have a full-time person, it was appropriate to have an adjunct, and that often worked well for that particular individual. But the way people are evaluated on a tenure track for promotion and if ultimately to get tenure, there are 3 criteria, and it's teaching, scholarship, and service. In my mind, the number one is teaching. I mean, we don't have graduate assistants. I mean, the Trinity faculty, what you see is what you get. And we are the teachers, and I don't think there's much room for someone not interested in the classroom. Scholarship is important. I think every faculty member needs to have areas of their own research and interest and scholarly activities. But at the same time, I think we have to be careful not to kind of drift into a warmed over version of publish or perish, which is really a kind of universally thing. The one that in some ways concerns me is service, because it's often set aside as not important, but service may mean serving on a very important committee, like appointments and promotion. And it certainly has to do with advising students. And if the word gets around to young faculty that, well, don't waste your time on that, make yourself scarce, we're going to lose something, because I think Trinity's greatest strength over the years, back to my undergraduate days, is the close working relationship with the faculty. Anyway, that's enough of my homily on that subject.
Borden, I would like to add that I can't remember what year this was, but Drew Highland brought from Princeton, when they were doing it there, a faculty liaison program where one or more faculty were invited to join one of our teams. They didn't have to go to practice. They didn't have to dribble. They just were invited to come down and meet the students. And I believe now all 30 teams have at least one, and they're very engaged, and they've been instrumental in extra advising, picking classes, helping with this missing class game time situation. But when I was there and it was just starting out, I have a strong memory that several of them wanted to do it, declined to do it because they didn't think it would amount to anything when they went up for promotion.
Yeah.
And I found that so sad, because that was an important job in my mind. And
yes, no, that's an excellent example of the kind of thing. I mean, where service can be so important, the whole relationship between students and faculty. It should not be relegated to sort of side activity. We don't have on our panel tonight any scientists, and there were several questions about science. All I can say is, from everything I can see, the sciences are alive and well at Trinity. I think there's still always an active number of pre-meds, and if they can survive organic chemistry, off on they go. One of the things I learned this when I filled in as dean faculty for 3 years in the 80s, that one of the advantages of coming to a place like Trinity, a small liberal arts college for the sciences, as opposed to a big university, is that you actually get to work closely with these scientists. And often our science students, majors can often end up doing work with faculty and research in the summers. So there are many opportunities that may not exist at the big universities with all their specialization in one thing or another. So sciences, I think, are alive and well. Someone did want to, yeah, Michael, go ahead.
My youngest, both my daughters went to Trinity, and my oldest daughter did an American Studies major. She really enjoyed, and she did a double major in English and American Studies. But my youngest daughter did a major, also a double major in biology and Hispanic studies. And she graduated in 2019. So, through her, I was able to, because I would, like a soccer mom, I was a science dad. I would go to her presentations. When she was talking about some, photographs she had taken with Dan Blackburn's, super duper microscope. I would go and not understand much of what was being said, but I was very impressed by the level of science instruction. And moreover, we touched upon the idea of outcomes. The outcomes are terrific. I mean, my daughter graduated. She did an APRN degree at Vanderbilt. I think we've done a great job with the sciences. I think it gets better and better. And I think here, a word of praise to our retiring president. Joanne was the first scientist to lead the college. And I think that a tribute to her is that, in tribute to her, I would say that the sciences have really flourished during this 11-year presidency. And neuroscience has really become, we're talking about curricular change. Neuroscience has become a wonderful new major. It was a major before, but not flourishing as it has.
And
So,
environmental science.
Yeah.
Also, which, again, speaks to, I think, the opportunities for interdisciplinarity and how important it is to do that. And I know we've had many double majors in public policy and law who also are science majors. And I mean, their careers, I just will say, without naming names, some of these young people have gone on to do just spectacular things.
Yeah, I wanted to refer back to something that Borden had said earlier. You're talking about collaboration with the faculty. Students will be collaborating in projects with the faculty. I just wanted to say that in recent times, the college has made it possible for students to stay during the summer and work on special projects with faculty. And in the end, both the faculty and students have published together. I mean, that's just absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Yeah. I was very much involved with the Rome program for many years. And Hank de Phillips in the early 80s went one summer and taught a course in the chemistry of art, and it changed his whole career. Mm-hmm. And he went into that and became quite an expert, well known, and very involved with the Rome program, and is a wonderful example of science in Rome, I guess. And And the way at Trinity, someone could change their field like that, not only get away with it, but flourish. I don't think that's typical at a university with specialization. I did it myself a little bit because my position was early modern Europe, but through the influence of Mike Campo and the Rome program, I got into modern Italian studies, Mussolini and all that, which turned out to be very, very important in both my scholarly and teaching career. Now, at this point, I might pause and see if there are any questions that have come up during the broadcast. Michelle, anything for us?
Quite a few questions. One that jumps out to me is, in your experience, how have smartphones altered the liberal arts classroom experience?
I would love to say something about that because I saw who asked the question in the chat, so I get to say hi to Adam. Thank you so much for coming, Adam. You are such a sweetheart, and a very accomplished person as well. I have to say that I reached the point, and it's a good thing I retired, because I just found it impossible to manage the cell phone problem. It became more and more difficult. And I eventually just got to the point where I had to say to students, if it's on, it's mine, for the next hour. It's going on my desk. I can't do this anymore. And so my own experience was, oh, I see a heart. Good. My own experience is that this was, it's really problematic. And again, it became much more acute, the problem during the pandemic, when really people, I think, had more reason to maybe want to be in contact with folks at home and all of that. So I was much more tolerant in those years. But it's just, and the reason it's so bad is because students can't pay attention. And I do think this is one change and one real difference. And this is true up until last June, that students just have so much more trouble being attentive and not, where's my PowerPoint? I don't have a PowerPoint. I never did. That's not how I taught. It wasn't conducive to what I was teaching. And, one of the criticisms on one of my last set of evaluations, like, student loved the course, whoever this person was, everything was great. And then the person said, but you assigned books.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't like this book, it's that you assigned books. And so I think, Adam, it's not just smartphones, but it's all of the technology. And it really is difficult, I think, to find the proper balance. I think finally at the end, maybe I got there. But for me personally, it was really difficult to establish the kind of atmosphere in the classroom where we could all learn together.
If I could add, I actually talked to a couple of our coaches about this. Obviously, you can't be playing on the field or the court with your phone, but you could have it over on the bench. But one of our coaches, who coaches a women's sport, she said they leave them in the locker room, and she has actually talked to her athletes, and they actually feel almost a feeling of relief that for 2 hours, they don't have to check it. They don't feel nervous about it. They're all together. They're interacting with each other. But I also read and heard from coaches that, right along the lines of what you're talking about, Rennie, all of us are so used to getting information in little chunks, right? Little bits and pieces, whether you're on Instagram or any kind of social media, even TV, that the attention span, get this, was 8 seconds. Somebody could focus for 8 seconds before they needed your PowerPoint. That's tough. That is tough. So if you're that is, and I find myself guilty of this as well.
That's why I invited you to class.
Yes.
You livened it up.
So anyway, she said I thought it was interesting that she said it's a release for these, in this case, women for 2 hours or 2.5 hours. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to look over there and see it buzzing. They're free. They're actually free.
And this is clearly a generational thing. It's national. I mean, you hear all the time about, can you assign a book for students to read? Can they read a whole book? And so these are some of the challenges. And I know I'm technically inept, and as more and more technology is coming in, that's one of the reasons I had to retire, I think. But it's tough. It's tough to keep up with.
One thing about I did use PowerPoint. I started using PowerPoint when finally it became easy to do that. And my first PowerPoints were very crude. I remember in one of my a comment on my teaching. I was team teaching a course with Jack Chatfield, who was our dear friend of a number of us on this panel, and we taught together for a long time. And he was a great lecturer. I felt that I was never quite in his league. So I started using PowerPoints, and I remember one of the students said in an evaluation of our course, the only thing I like Professor Lestz lectures, but don't let him use PowerPoint. But I did get better. I did get better, and I think my PowerPoints became more enjoyable, less like the cave paintings in Lascaux. And more interesting. But teaching technology has changed so much, and there have been so many wonderful benefits. But as Rennie was saying, it's really a pain in the neck when you're talking and you see someone furtively looking at their phone under the desk, and even sometimes I have been told that it has become used by people who are cutting corners on exams and exercises. So
I'm sorry.
One wonderful thing about always new challenges in teaching.
Yes.
In my latter years, I used PowerPoint. Like you, they were really quite crude, the presentations. But one of the things that I found at the end, which I might mention, is that there's some wonderful films and videos on YouTube. And I have learned to use those, which have turned out to be quite effective in showing them to the students in the classroom. And they fitted within the context of the course. So toward the end there, I did that. I mean, I use YouTube, not extensively, but maybe in a semester, maybe twice. And that worked quite well.
I'm wondering, Michelle, do you have any other questions for us?
Certainly. I think one, I see that we've got about 10 minutes left. One that I think will be interesting to kind of wrap things up with is, are you still involved academically, whether it's at the college or in outside pursuits? And if not, what are you focusing your time on now that you're not in the classroom every day?
Well, I'll answer quickly for myself. I'm very lucky. I'm in a retirement community, Seabury retirement community in Bloomfield, and here we have an adult learning program, ALP. And so I usually teach a course each semester, and it's a lot of fun, but also since I haven't taught for 20 years, I have to do a lot of homework, but it helps keep me alive, and it's fun teaching adults, and it's been a joy to do that, sort of keep my finger in the pie. How about the others?
Some years ago, I'm sorry, Rennie, go ahead.
I'll be really quick.
Yeah.
I was saying when we gathered earlier, I mean, I'm still writing law school recommendations, so I still I still feel connected. But I am looking forward to doing something like what Borden is doing right now, and working for being very involved with the local library, because I think I will enjoy that very much. So that's what I've got to say.
Yeah, good, good.
Some years ago, with Trinity's support, and also grants that I got from the college, I did some research in the Caribbean. And I was in Jamaica, and for the first time went across some Jews in Jamaica, and also visited a couple of synagogues, talked to a couple of rabbis, and I was very, very impressed. But this is not really what I was doing, so I put it on the back burner all these years. And it's very interesting that in the past 7, 8 years or so, I've gone back to my notes, and I've gone back to things like I've gone back to Jamaica as well, and did some research on the history of Judaism in the Caribbean. And so I've been able to, so I wrote a paper specifically on that, and it published in a volume that was published about 2 months ago by Oxford University Press. So I was very pleased about that. So yeah, I'm continuing. I mean, I'm not dead yet, so I'm continuing with my research. And I also had done some work with the Rastafarians. So I published also from Oxford University Press an entire chapter of an anthology on the Rastas. And that's the same volume that came out 2 months ago. So I just wanted to point that out. The other thing that I've been doing is I've been working with refugees. And I'm not an attorney, but I work with attorneys in translating material from to the French, from English to the French legal materials for these people who are coming from elsewhere. And I work mostly with French-speaking people from Congo and Haiti and other places. And but the other thing that I do is also get them to be accustomed to American life, and then facilitate things for them. How do you do your taxes? Could I find an accountant? So I find an accountant for them. And I've become quite good at it, actually. I found an accountant who is doing for refugees, is working and doing taxes for my refugees for $2. So it's been a very fulfilling and rewarding task that I've done in the past, since I retired, since 2018.
You know, a friend of mine, who some of our listeners tonight might know, is Dr. Holmes Morton, who started a clinic first in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, which is close to my hometown, and then in Belleville, Pennsylvania. And he has taken up. He hasn't quite retired, but he's edging in that direction. And he said, Michael, as you wind down a little in your professional activities, you always should be doing something that is hard, something that is difficult, something that you can really cast your mind at. And in his case, it was the cello. So he saws away on the cello, and actually, he's gotten quite good. He's appeared in concerts with some noted cellists. In my case, I returning to Russian has, Chinese was my professional language for my whole career, and to a degree Italian. I love languages, but I always wanted to do more with Russian, and I'm really glad that through Trinity I've been able to achieve that dream. But I'd like to, his name has been mentioned. I'd like to, wherever he is, I'd like to send a shout out to Mike Campo, because Mike Campo, I think, was a model for so many of us. I mean, he was an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He, started the Rome campus, and a remarkable man. I began to know him when I was a student, and we were friends as he was a teacher. I too taught at the Rome campus, believe it or not, and also in Elder Hustle. I taught a course on Marco Polo.
Mhm.
It had to be Italy related. And then later, when I was teaching at the Barbieri Center in Rome, I taught a course on what the Italians call the White War, the First World War in Italy. And these are all things, I mean, Trinity, I think lots of institutions don't do this, but it has given all of us as teachers, in whatever the field, a chance to grow and continue to learn in our professional lives. And, as we were teaching, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things we have as retirement is plenty of time to read. And I know I'm in 2 book clubs, and often people will choose a book I wouldn't otherwise have thought of. And 90% of the time, almost 100, I'm glad to have read that book. And it's another way of sort of keeping our minds going. We are, I think, drawing near to a close. And I want to thank my fellow panelists and all of you who tuned in. My apologies if we didn't get to your favorite topic or question, but of course we were limited in time. But I do think we covered quite a bit of territory, and it's been a lot of fun. And I hope, well, maybe I'll see some of you at reunion. Thank you very much for attending. Over and out.
Thank you.